check, right? Okay. Level check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You good? Okay.
Testing. Good morning, San Francisco. My name is Emma Hare. I am a legislative aide for Supervisor Myrna Melgar, who cannot join us today, but cares deeply about the safety on our streets, cares deeply about our First Amendment rights, and cares deeply about making sure that we're standing up to chaos and injustice coming out of Washington, D.C. So with that, I'm going to hand over the microphone to our Senator Scott Wiener to share some more details.
Thank you, Emma. So welcome, everyone. I'm Scott Wiener. I have the honor of representing San Francisco and northern San Mateo County in the state Senate. I'm joined here today by my colleague, Senator Jesse Aregin from the East Bay, and we're here to announce new legislation, Senate Bill 627, the No Secret Police Act. This is a very important and timely proposal to deal with the fact that we are seeing more and more law enforcement officers, particularly at the federal level, be in our community, covering their faces entirely, not identifying themselves at all, at times even wearing Army fatigues, where you can't tell are these law enforcement officers or a vigilante militia. And we're in a moment of time, and they're grabbing people off of our streets and disappearing people. And it is terrifying. It is tearing apart communities. It's causing chaos, and it is a growing problem. And law enforcement officers are public servants, and people should be able to see their faces, see who they are, know who they are. Otherwise, there's no transparency and no accountability. We know that President Trump has put cities in the U.S., most recently Los Angeles, under siege. He announced yesterday on Truth Social that he's going to be escalating immigration enforcement as part of their mass deportation campaign in L.A., as well as Chicago and New York City. And we're really at risk of having effectively secret police in this country. Law enforcement that you can't even identify who they are, what agency they're with, and whether or not they are actually law enforcement. That doesn't work. Yeah, I'll do this. And so it is a huge problem, and we need to address it. We also know that the Trump administration is seeking to force local law enforcement to be part of his deportation machine. In California, we have a sanctuary law that prevents local law enforcement from being part of the deportation process, but we know that Trump is challenging our sanctuary law as well as sanctuary laws in other states, and wants to conscript local law enforcement into his deportation machine. So now is the time for California to act and to protect our communities. We do not need secret police in California. We don't need law enforcement officers who are covering their faces, who are not identifying themselves, who are jumping out of unmarked vehicles and grabbing residents of this state, including at times citizens, people who live here, work here, grabbing them, throwing them into vans, and disappearing them. That is what is happening right now, and we need to put a stop to it. SB 627 will do two things. First, it will prohibit law enforcement officers at all levels from covering their faces, with a few exceptions. For example, SWAT teams, medical masking, as well as masking when there is some sort of natural disaster, so there's a lot of smoke. And we'll continue to work with law enforcement to refine that provision. We want to make sure, of course, officers can protect themselves without turning into the secret police. The other provision of the bill will require that officers have identification, whether it's a name or a badge number, this is a very normal thing when San Francisco police officers, when you see them walking around, they have their name, they have their badge number, and that is a typical normal practice for law enforcement, and we're seeing that practice start to fade away. And it is critically important that people know who they're interacting with and that they're interacting with actual law enforcement officers. What's happening now also leads to vigilantism, and so it's really important that we get ahead of this. So with that, I'll turn it over to my colleague, Senator Arreguin, for his remarks.
Well, thank you very much, Senator Wiener, for bringing this important bill forward. I'm proud to be a joint author of SB 627, the No Secret Police Act. And this law is really rooted in two principles. One, to protect the safety of California's communities, and two, to ensure that there's transparency and accountability for law enforcement. There already are state laws that require that officers have to have badges and have identifying information. But what we have been seeing in the last few weeks are law enforcement, some local, some federal, who are wearing masks to completely hide their faces while they're carrying out deportation, other enforcement activities. And as Senator Wiener said, literally snatching people off the streets. And this is really about making sure that we know what's happening. We know who is engaged in these law enforcement operations. And as the chair of the State Senate Public Safety Committee, I believe this is critical to make sure that we can make our communities safer. So this is a very difficult time in our state. As we've seen in Southern California and even parts of Northern California with increased enforcement operations at courthouses and on our streets, people are afraid. Families are being torn apart. And it's important that people that are engaged in any sort of law enforcement activity, whether it's state, whether it's county, or whether it's federal, that there's full transparency in terms of what's happening. In addition, we are seeing people who are impersonating law enforcement officials. And so this is also to try to discourage these imposters, these thugs that are engaging in activity that's clearly illegal and clearly not authorized. So this is a very important step to hold law enforcement accountable, to keep our communities safe in California. And we are committed to move this bill forward this year. It is time critical. It is important that we put this in place now.
Thank you. I also just want to add the bill also applies to contractors who are retained by law enforcement, because we're starting to see talk about that, about some of these private military organizations being brought in to help round people up. And so it will apply to them as well. So with that, we're happy to take any questions. Yes. It applies to law enforcement. It's as drafted. It does not apply to the military. It applies to law enforcement. I'm sorry, I can't hear you. What?
How will it be enforced?
Yeah, the bill creates a misdemeanor for violation of it, and so that's how it would be enforced. Yeah, I want to be clear. None of this is like easy. This is all messy because this administration has created this explosively chaotic situation. So this is not normal. None of this is normal. None of this is what the system was designed and has traditionally operated to deal with. It's all new and unprecedented. We have not had an aspiring fascist dictator in this country who's trying to create a police state with secret police. That's what's happening right now. A year ago, people would have called me melodramatic for saying that. It's not melodramatic. It's real. And so, yes, if this is happening, people can. I'll wait for him to. It's fine. You can just take it. Oh. Okay. Okay.
You got it.
Thank you.
Secret police.
So- Thank you. And so yes, people would report it as a violation of the law, as they would any other crime, including crime by law enforcement. Law enforcement officers can currently commit many different kinds of crimes, and you report it. You know, as someone, you know, I've experienced over the last 5+ years thousands of death threats, and I know I have other colleagues who have experienced death threats as well. And I know the state Senate takes very seriously the security of senators. I know the Assembly has the same approach. I think that there is a long overdue conversation happening because of Minnesota around state legislators around the country and members of Congress as well about security, because political violence is on the rise. I also just want to say that our local elected officials, for example, school board members up and down the state, they get harassed and threatened as well. So this is a broad issue, and I hope that this horrific disaster in Minnesota, and I actually knew the former Assembly Speaker. We were on a panel together about a year and a half ago. She's absolutely wonderful, and it's sparking a long overdue conversation.
On that note, what kind of concerns are there about people's ability to be able to buy these types of outfits and disguise?
Well,
Lawmakers saying it's what about people who might not have the wherewithal to identify them?
Sorry for the feedback. So people impersonating police officers has happened, you know, for a long time, but because of what Donald Trump and Kristi Noem and the rest of this sort of fascist crew, because of what they're doing, they're encouraging and empowering people to impersonate law enforcement. Just in terms of the chaos they're creating, and you look at, you know, how these ICE officers are dressed. You're like, who are you? And they actually will wear, they'll put police on their jacket, which I know is very concerning to local law enforcement, because the police officers are there to keep people safe, not to deport people. And so when you have ICE agents running around with police on their jacket, that's like impersonating local police too, to be honest. So they're creating this chaotic situation. It's like nothing we've ever seen before in this country, and we're all trying to pivot and respond to it to keep communities safe. That's what this is about. But the issue you identify is very real, and the public is going to have to become more and more educated about identifying who is an actual law enforcement officer and who isn't. And that's part of what this bill is about, so that people can see someone's face, they can see a name, identifying information, and that will help people to be able to identify who's real and who isn't. There's always going to be the ability to commit fraud, but Trump is actually encouraging law enforcement to commit fraud, which is antithetical to public safety.
And then should be exempted for medical and
No.
What about the scenarios where people protest and they're wearing their riot gear?
Yeah, so the riot gear is typically it's a see-through mask where you can see their face, but it's a face shield on it. This bill does not in any way stop that. You just have to be able to see the face. Yeah, in terms of federal versus state, and that's something that we dealt with for a long time. For example, Trump has long taken the position, which we disagree with, that that state and local sanctuary laws are somehow illegal under federal law. They're not. They're perfectly legal, but we have those state versus federal interactions, and that's certainly an issue here. that will be a topic of conversation. But we think it is important for California to step up to protect public safety and the safety of our communities, and it means being aggressive in doing so. We're in a crisis right now.
Have you had conversations about this bill with local police departments or police unions? About this bill?
Yeah, I've had conversations. Yes, I'm not going to say who I spoke with, but I have a great relationship with SFPD. SFPD does a fantastic job, and I know SFPD. SFPD has been very good about understanding our sanctuary ordinance here and helping keep immigrants safe. So, and again, we'll be, I'm sure, interacting with state and local law enforcement in California to refine the bill to make sure that officers are able to be safe and do their jobs, and that we can also keep the community safe. Yes. So my heart just like sank when I woke up yesterday and saw what had happened Saturday night in Minnesota with, because I'll be honest, I've had police officers come to my front door knocking in the middle of the night because of bomb threats or death threats directed at me. And when you see an officer outside, all of our instinct is, of course, you open the door to let the officer in. And so for that to happen at that level of sophistication is terrifying, period. But for it to be directed and result in the death and the very, very serious injury of sitting state legislators who were elected to represent their communities, and we see the list. I haven't seen the whole list. As far as I can tell, the list that I've heard, it's all Democrats. I haven't seen the list, so it's possible there were Republicans on there, but what I've seen is that this was directed at Democrats. And political violence, it is horrible for so many reasons, but one of the reasons is that when elected officials should be focused exclusively on doing right by their constituents and by their own values. And when elected officials are put in a position to think, if I cast this vote, if I do this, it might result in me or my family being killed, it distorts the whole system and undermines democracy. Yes? Yeah, Donald Trump is a pathological liar. He always has been, and he's doing so again. He lied during the campaign by saying that he was going to deport people who committed crimes. That was never the plan, and we see it now. They're rounding up all sorts of people who are working, paying taxes, raising families, who are good, decent human beings and great members of our community. And he at least admitted that deporting workers is not a good idea, but now he's back to just saying we're going to round up everyone. And the fact that he's focusing on democratically run democratic cities, I think speaks volumes. This is all about a political agenda and payback and going after blue cities. He doesn't care about public safety. This is the guy who pardoned the January 6th insurrectionists. So he's a liar, and that's coming out again. Do you want to add anything to that, or no? Well, the RNC has already tweeted about it, so I'm sure they will react, and that is what it is. In terms of local law enforcement, we'll be, I've already had some conversations, and we'll continue to have those conversations for sure. And I think there are a lot of people in local law enforcement in California, because some of them have expressed it to me, who are absolutely horrified with what's happening with these masked agents and with the putting police on their jacket when they're not police. So yeah, we'll have those conversations.
Yeah, if I can just elaborate, people covering their faces, impersonating police officers, it erodes trust in law enforcement and it undermines community safety. That's really what this bill is about. And I think many law enforcement officials, legitimate law enforcement officials, would welcome putting in safeguards to ensure transparency and accountability. And I think the concern is a lot that's happening. There are a lot of people who are engaged in these enforcement actions, and we don't know, are they federal, are they contractors, are they local law enforcement? And so we're requiring that people not have to wear masks except for some very limited exceptions, and that there be identifying information ensures that we know who is involved here. It's also critical to uphold our state and local laws, including our sanctuary law, SB 54, which says that local law enforcement are not going to be involved in immigration enforcement. So this is, I think, furthering the state's efforts to ensure legitimate law enforcement purposes and to protect Californians.
Yeah, I mean, doxing is wrong, and when people dox people, there are rules around that. But law enforcement officers serve the community. They're not separate from the community. They serve the community. And when if you start having a system where law enforcement officers are like, moving towards like stormtroopers in Star Wars, where when I was a kid, I remember thinking that stormtroopers were all robots. They're not. They're people who wore, just covered everything up. We don't want to move towards that kind of model where law enforcement becomes almost like an occupying army disconnected from the community. And that's what it is when you start hiding their face, hiding the identity. And that's why in San Francisco and in so many local communities, law enforcement officers, they don't cover their faces. They have their name and their badge number on their uniform, so you can see who's interacting with you or who's arresting you. And I understand, I don't want anyone to be doxxed, and there are rules around that, but boy, it's a totally different society that we're going to be living in if we get to the point where it is considered acceptable for law enforcement officers to be anonymous. That is not okay. Yeah. I think in the Bay Area we are very fortunate. We've had less activity, and of course we don't have the National Guard or the U.S. Marines on our streets. We have heard of some situations where it's unclear who's doing what. And again, whenever you see someone show up in like military fatigues, you're like, who is that person? But they're claiming to be law enforcement, and usually law enforcement doesn't dress up in military fatigues. That's not a usual thing. And so, I think we're aware of some potential situations in the Bay Area, but obviously there's been a lot more of it in LA. Yeah. It'll go into print tonight. I assume it will be referred to the Assembly Public Safety Committee. I can never guarantee that, but that's my assumption. And if it's only referred to one committee, then it would have to be heard at some point in the next month. Okay. Any final questions? Okay. Awesome. Oh, yes. One last question. Yeah, so this doesn't require them to wear a medical mask, but what the bill provides is if there is a health reason for them to wear a medical, meaning a surgical mask or an N95, not putting up like, a gaiter over your face and claiming that that's a medical mask, because it isn't, that they would still be allowed to do that. Or if there's like a natural disaster, so there's smoke, and they need to put on something to protect them from the smoke. So we're, going to have, that has and will have exceptions in it to be able to protect the officers' health and safety. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone.